I'm Gary Stevenson, a former trader and people's economist. This is Gary's Economics, and today we're going to talk about tax. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about one of the most common questions I get on the channel, which is, okay, you want to tax rich people. Well, if you tax them, they're just going to leave. Okay, so this is relatively easy to deal with, but before I just take that question on, I want to talk a little bit about the fact that in a sense it's progress we're even talking about this, because when I first started talking about tax, what I would often get back is you can't tax rich people are the lifeblood of the economy, it's very important for the economy that you don't tax rich people. I think it's becoming increasingly obvious to people that what is happening with the economy now is not working. The vast majority of people want something done about inequality, but it goes to this question of, well, maybe you can't tax them. I think it's a sign of progress that people have accepted now we should tax them. That moves us onto this question of, well, can you tax them? And if you tax them, are they going to just leave, basically? So this idea that if you tax rich people, they will leave, is actually based on a misunderstanding, essentially, of what rich people are. So I think we have this kind of conception that rich people are just sort of really talented, amazing guys who have massive, massive bank accounts or massive bags of cash, which means if you raise taxes on them, they can take their money to another country, they can take this big bag of cash and they can just leave. But this is not actually what rich people are. And I explain this a lot in my video, What is Wealth? Rich people are rich not just because they've got a lot of money. Often they do have a lot of money. The main thing they have which makes them rich is that they own assets. In this country, the UK, but also in most rich countries, that's largely property. So we're talking about buildings. This could be flats and houses people live in, or it could be the mortgage you have on your flat that you live in, but also commercial property. So they'll own the skyscrapers, they'll own the shops and the restaurants, they'll own the buildings, they'll own the shopping centres. They'll also own the land, the farmland, they'll own the natural resources. So, you know, if you see those windmills that generate electricity, or we've got offshore oil rigs here in this country, they own all of these things, the natural resources, the buildings, the land, and every single time you use one of those things, so every time you live in a house or a flat, every time you go to work in an office, every time you shop in a shopping centre, every time you eat food that was grown on the land, you pay money to these rich people. It's very important you understand this. Rich people are rich because they own the assets that we need to live. And once you understand this, you realize that this idea that the rich will just leave is a little bit ridiculous, right? Because if the rich people leave, and the reason they're rich is because they own all of our assets, well, the assets are still here, and we can still choose to tax those assets if we choose to. I think the best example of this, and it's perhaps the only positive thing to have come out of this ridiculous Russia-Ukraine war, is that finally governments decided that we're going to tax some rich people, specifically in this case, Russian oligarchs. And very famously, they went after Roman Abrhamovic. And Roman Abrhamovic, he tried to leave, but the problem is, like, he can't put Chelsea Football Club in a bag and take it with him. And this is the fundamental problem of rich people. Rich people are not, these people are not magic, you know. These guys are not Gandalf the wizard. They don't just have richness like in their blood. They're rich because they own our assets. And even if they leave, the assets are still here. And we can choose to tax those assets. So at the moment, we live largely in a tax system where we essentially allow rich people to choose where they live and to pay tax on all of their assets where they live. But we don't need to do that, right? If a rich person flees the country to try and avoid tax, but they still own, for example, your mortgage or your house or the office you work in, the government can choose to tax those assets. And you might say, well, what if they sell those assets? Well, to be honest, I think in a sense that's what we want, right? We want you to be able to own the house that you live in without having to owe a massive mortgage to rich people. We want you to be able to own part of the commercial property in the country and the corporations in this country. You know, at the moment, these rich people, they own your country. They own your mortgage. They own your house, right? And even if they leave, they will still own your country, your mortgage on your house, and your country can choose to tax them on the assets. So really, it's very, very simple. It's a question of, do you want your country to be owned by people who pay tax or not? And if you do, then it doesn't matter where they go, because it's your country, and you can ask the people who own your country to pay tax on those assets. So I think it's very, very simple, really. Look, and I think it all comes down to this, Roman Abrhamovic was not able to put Chelsea Football Club in a bag, and these rich people, no matter where they go, this country will still exist, and the assets will still exist, and they can be taxed here. And I think when you understand it like that, you realise it's actually very simple. Of course we can tax them, and that raises the question, well, why don't we then? And, there are a lot of possible reasons why that could be, but I'm going to give you a couple suggested reasons. Number one, Rishi Sunak is the 222nd richest man in the country. He's worth over £700 million. His father-in-law is one of the richest men in the entire world, and he chooses the tax laws. The previous Prime Minister, David Cameron, made £10 million within a year of leaving office, and he made the tax laws. Tony Blair, I think, is worth about £100 million, and he made the tax laws. So we are putting the tax law decisions entirely in the hands of people who are multi-millionaires or maybe even billionaires, and then they're telling us we'd love to raise tax on rich people, but unfortunately it's just totally impossible. And unfortunately some people are believing it. Don't believe it, because we can tax them, it's in our power, and we can do it. All we need is to come together and all agree that that's what we're going to do. So yeah, support the channel, tell your friends, tell your family. If we want to tax them, we can, and we really should. Thank you.